Hey guys, Rominating Reaper here. So yesterday I finished watching Season 3 of Squid Game. This is of course the final season of the show, and it's coming to us a mere 6 months after Season 2. Look, all the people that are complaining that the gaps between seasons of television are getting longer and longer in the age of streaming probably be very happy by the short gap between these two seasons of Squid Game. And look, I was really excited to see this final season because I am a fan of the show. I very much enjoyed the first two seasons. So I was really looking forward to seeing just how they would wrap it up. And I had my fingers crossed that they would deliver a satisfying conclusion to Gi-Hun's overarching story. But does this season deliver a satisfying conclusion to a global phenomenon? Well, let's find out. So the season picks up right where season 2 left off, with Gi-Hun's attempt at a revolution to end the games once and for all failing disastrously. And in the aftermath, he and all the other players who dared to take a stand with him all find themselves blaming themselves in some capacity for how it went down. However, they all soon find themselves thrown right back into the games, facing an even deadlier set of challenges as the games barrel towards the final round. However, along the way, Gi-Hun soon finds himself with a newfound sense of responsibility. So, of course, final seasons to long-running, hugely successful shows historically have been a bit of a mixed bag, a notable one being Game of Thrones, which of course that's seemingly the only ending we'll get, because, well, George R.R. Martin is never going to fucking write that final book. And so I'm both excited and nervous for the final season of Stranger Things on that front. Now look, there's been a lot of discourse about the final season of Squid Game online. Just a lot of people absolutely hating how they concluded it. And so, with that in mind, I thought the final season was fine. Like, yeah, it's definitely a step down from the first two seasons, so it's definitely a bit underwhelming, and honestly, it has plenty of flaws, but there's enough here that I like that I didn't actively hate it. Now, let's start with the positives here, because again, there is a fair amount that I liked. It's a really well made show from a technical perspective, and obviously has a lot of like the editing, the cinematography, the score are all really well done, but very much the sort of highlight, the piece de resistance of this show is the production design. Across all three seasons, there's some really creative stuff in here as they go like very much lean into the whole children's games aspect with lots of really fun, brightly colored sets throughout. A particular highlight of this season is the sort of arena that they play the hide and seek game in, with the sort of starry night sky backdrop, which front and center of the promotional poster for this season, and for good reason. In general, the games are exactly what makes this show just so straightforwardly enjoyable to watch. Obviously, yes, what keeps us watching is the messages, the sort of anti-capitalist themes, but what grips us, what hooks us in, are the games, and once again they deliver. Obviously, the hide and seek one is particularly strong, and in fact, ironically, is the centerpiece of the best episode of the season. In fact, it's up there with some of the best episodes of the show. Another highlight is the jump rope game, which is exactly the kind of suspense building that makes the games in this show just so damn entertaining to watch. And of course, they sprinkle in some emotional moments as well to really keep you invested. And in fact, in general, the first half of the season is actually pretty damn solid overall. Obviously, there's lots of really likable characters and great acting, particularly from Lee Jung-jae as Gi-Hun. He does a really good job selling that defeated optimist. There's lots of really gripping character drama, and again, the acting really does sell that. Now, definitely there are issues in the first half of the season, mainly in the subplots. Obviously there's the sort of search for the island, which they managed to pad out over 2 seasons and only reached resolution in like the final few episodes. So they basically just spent a load of episodes just dicking about on that one. There's also another subplot where one of the soldiers goes rogue to rescue one of the players. That one, in theory, is kind of interesting, but again, did feel kind of padded out. But I think by and large, the first half of the season really, really solid, and if they definitely kept up that momentum, this definitely could have, at the very least, been a season on par with season two. That being said, though, yeah, the second half of the season really takes a bit of a nosedive in quality. Now, there's a running thing throughout the second half of the season, of course. This season, they pay off the thing where one of the players was heavily pregnant. They pay that off, and the direction they take it in was just so bizarre. Like, I could see what they were trying to do, sort of tapping in to Gi-Hun's instincts as a father. That could have been really strong stuff. And the problem is, the execution is so, like, far-fetched. It really feels like jumping the shark. It feels like they were desperate to come up with something unexpected for the final season, and it just didn't land. Not helping matters is that by the time we get to the second half of this season, basically all the likable characters bar Gi-Hun are gone. So we're just sort of left with all the sort of unlikable ones, the ones that are in it just for the prize money. And so really, yes, it's a bit, one-sided where we only have, sort of Gi-Hun to root for. And again, with the whole baby thing, it really does feel just so utterly ludicrous and nonsensical. Like, it's like the writing just suddenly took a a sudden sharp drop off in quality from how well written and gripping the rest of the show has been. Yeah, it really is bizarre. And in general, the conclusion they reached with all of that was just such a head scratcher. Yeah, really, really bizarre end. But talking of end, I think what drags this thing, really drags it down, is the finale. Yeah, what a disappointing end to what was a global phenomenon. Like, don't get me wrong, the first half of the finale actually does have some real strong moments, and there's some pretty touching scenes in there. But man, once we get to the second half and we're very much just wrapping everything up, yeah, that's where I lost me. It very much just drags itself on and on, basically tying up like every loose end to a conclusion that, uh, yeah, basically a bit of a betrayal of the sort of anti-capitalist themes that the show has had. So it's quite ironic that the note they ended on, you can just feel Netflix getting their grubby little corporate hands all over it as they pave the way for an endless money-making machine, including an American version of the show, which is being overseen by David Fincher. Yeah, yeah, again, a real disappointing end to a show that I did overall like. Overall, Squid Game Season 3 may definitely be a step down from the first 2 seasons in quality, but there's enough here in terms of the craft and the writing, especially in the first half, that I can't actively hate it. But unfortunately, that finale really does drag what could have been a solid season down. Out of 10, Squid Game Season 3 gets a 6. So let me know down in the comments, have you seen Season 3 of Squid Game? What did you think of it? What did you think of the finale? What do you make of the show in comparison to the first two seasons? And so obviously with that end, what are your opinions on the show overall? And will you be watching the American version? Let me know all that down in the comments. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you're new, and don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload.